periodicity. It's about 11 years, which is solar cycle. So in the maximum of the solar cycle, you have better clearing of the upper layers of the atmosphere, so the debris goes a little bit down, and then in the minimum, it rises again. And we, by the way, just passed the solar maximum. We are in the 25th solar cycle. Compared to that, they look into a scenario where we would stop launches right away. No more satellites, no launches anymore. And you still see it continues to rise because with all the objects that are in orbit, there are occasionally collisions, there are self-fragmentations, and that leads to the fact that even if we would stop today, this is a slight decrease, which of course will not happen, but I think it's a good reference to see that really it's time to take action. So with that, I would like to end. I thank you for your attention. I hope, I know it's a very difficult topic, but I try to explain why it would be important, in my view, that ASE is engaging there, not only on high-level political aspects, but really to help the community to improve. And hopefully in the next year I can report about the results. So thank you very much. And if you have questions, ready to answer.
Hello. Thank you, Thomas. I forgot to mention that the previous chair of the Space Traffic Management and Orbital Debris is Mark Brown, and Thomas just took over from this. Can you imagine the conversation between these two? They really know their subject. Thank you so much. We have time for 1 or 2 questions.
Thank you. Is there any photographic or video evidence of space debris? And as a second question, any update on the Chinese vehicle?
Okay, to your first question, not to my knowledge, there is a video. We are using, of course, high-resolution radars to see if objects are passing. And for example, we did last year controlled re-entry of a satellite, Aeolus, which was a research satellite measuring the wind profiles, the global wind profiles from surface to 25 kilometers altitude. And it was coming to its operational end. And with the last drops of fuel, it was braking and then re-entering over the Atlantic. And this last phase could be or was actually seen on the radar, but there is not, to my knowledge, a picture of space. I mean, the picture I showed with the ISS, it doesn't look like that when you look out of the window, fortunately. And to your second question, I'm sorry, I cannot say anything, but we have our Chinese colleagues here, so maybe I can address it to them and they can give you an answer to that.
Any other questions in the back?
Thomas, are there here? Oh, Thomas. Are there any promising ideas for making the extract of debris for space missions, or you think that is something that we will need to handle with for a long time?
Okay, if I understood you correctly, it's a little bit, you know, my assessment. If we succeed, of course. I mean, that's why we are doing these activities. But what I can tell you, the situation is getting more serious every day. It's not the time to be alarmistic, even though this last slide might put you a little bit in this impression. But I'm a little bit afraid if we really don't take measures with the expected launches of satellite constellations, it will be very difficult. And I mean, remember, you have heard the excellent presentations of my colleagues about, you know, from VAST, from Sierra Nevada, Axiom. I mean, those are the future space stations. The Chinese still have a space station in orbit. And of course, we want to do everything that they can stay in orbit and are not threatened by debris. So actions need to be taken without any doubt. And you know, the better we collaborate, the earlier we get this problem under control.
One last question, Thibault?
Yeah, thank you. So, Thomas, in the beginning you mentioned that we track roughly 43,000 objects, and there are objects 140 million below the size of 1 centimeter, which I find a significant difference. Do you see any technologically, evolving or technological new solutions that can actually track much smaller objects? I had a second question as well, but I will just leave this.
No, that's a very good point, Thibault. The current sensors, I think they have a detection limit that is maybe slightly below 10 centimeters. And for example, with optical tracking, like space laser ranging, we can not only get more precise information, so this ellipsoid that you saw will significantly decrease just by using a more precise sensor, but that could also help to detect smaller objects. And we know the space station, if I remember correctly, is protected against objects up to 1 centimeter, I think it was. So between 1 centimeter and the detection limit, there is a gray area where we don't see anything coming. And yes, of course, it would be great if we could cover this gray area, but need to be aware, then this object data catalog will go crazy. It will increase by thousands and thousands of objects. And then all this conjunction assessment requires really an incredible processing power. But that is, it's not a question if that can be processed. It's more a question of being able to detect those areas.
Thank you very much, Thomas Raja, mesdames et messieurs. The next presenter is Alexander Sasha Alexandrov. So if you'd like a translation for Russian, the reason Sasha is presenting to us at this session is because he was very kind during Bob Cabana's technical session to do one of his 2 presentations. So Sasha is a veteran of 2 long-duration spaceflights. He flew on Space Station Salyut 7 and on Space Station Mir. He then worked as an engineer and a designer for Energia, but people say that across his career he bridged the gap between industrial leadership and professional government astronaut, which is exactly what we're doing today. So, Sasha, the floor is yours.
Спасибо большое, Джулия. Спасибо, дорогая.
I thank our president of our association, that I have this right to. At the first session with Bob Cabana, we were speaking that we should not forget what we can do in our cooperation. I would like to continue with that. Maybe it will not be the complete conversation, how we work together at the phase 1 and phase 2 at Mir, at the modern station. We have 35 years of cooperation and we go on. I can speak a lot of this, but the times change and the views at the mission completion are different. 6 years ago, we could not imagine that today the commercial programs will be so actual, so workable. The example of Dragonflight on program FRAM 2, we can say that this program is completely commercial, but the result is evident. We received with the now astronaut Jannike from Norway, who was the commander of 4 Europeans that were on the polar orbit. That's a very important step in our work. And not only professionals can do serious researches, because my generation, our generation with me and Julia, we were pilots, test pilots. We were testing the new equipment. We did Soyuz, that now is Soyuz MC, with computing board machine, and at the first flights, we were working with these machines face to face to be sure that this machine can do its operations. And today we have different missions because we learned how to operate the craft, the spacecraft that are an instrument now for the people who do scientific researches or practical researches. I would ask you to hear about the history of this cooperation, because without it, probably the ISS would not be so successful. Of people who were involved into the realization of this program, that it would give result in good results, so that we would not make maneuvers that we had to do at times at the Russian control center because of the fuel of the cargo ship that it's in the Russian segment. We had 2 accidents of collisions with debris when the cargo ship and Soyuz had dents of the external radiator, which generates warmth into space, and what was broken were pipes that lost their hermetization. But we resolved the situation in both cases, and the mission was completed well. So I wanted to say about our development of our cooperation. At certain time we didn't work closely, but when by April of 1981 space shuttle came to the orbit, that was something new in our life, and we understood that the cooperation may be achieved again. That was a Columbia ship. You can see that the tank is white. In April of 1984, at the Johnson Center in Houston, the first configuration of Freedom orbital station was presented. And in USSR, in 1986, we had Mir space station was ready for operation for 5 years. That was its configuration, the last configuration. We planned for 5 years that we would make the modules and everything's gonna be good. But the life proved different. It worked for 15 years and it was assembled not in an easy way. So that configuration has been built, and we started cooperation with NASA. When Gorbachev left and the USSR has transferred its powers, authorities to the president, to the Russian government by the beginning of the 90s of the last century, the manned space program continued to operate. because we had a lot of responsibilities, and Mir station continued working, and we had people on orbit. On June 17, 1992, Russia and the United States signed an agreement on cooperation in peaceful space exploration. The Russian Space Agency, RSA, Roscosmos, and NASA, National Aeronautic Administration, developed the Mir Shuttle Joint Program, consisting of 3 interrelated projects: flights of Russian cosmonauts on the American Space Shuttle, flights of American astronauts on the Russian Mir space station, and a joint flight involving the approach and docking of the space shuttle with the Mir station. The executive agreement between Roscosmos and NASA on cooperation in human spaceflight was signed on October 5th, 1992. In 1992, Roscosmos Energia organization, the main organization on manned flights, had a proposal in this agreement, proposal to Boeing, the Russian Energia cargo vehicles to bring payloads as a ship like Buran, Energia and Energia M could be used for cargoes that would be needed for the Freedom Station, which at the time has been well developed by NASA. The study showed that implementing this option would significantly reduce the frequency of space shuttle orbital launches for space station construction. Due to the commencement of work on the joint space station, which were coming closer, because as was a basis of an international station. We thought about a joint station, and with the commencement of this work between Russia and the United States, this work with Energia stopped because we didn't decide how to fly whose ships. Energia submitted a proposal to Boeing, understanding that space shuttle cannot be all the time be a security boat, safe boat. And Energia, our company, submitted to design a rescue vehicle on the basis of Soyuz TM cargo ship that could be for 200 days stay on board of the station. And that project was called the Assured Crew Return Vehicle. This agreement was concluded with NASA, and we started jointly with NASA specialists to work out the technologies that would be used by such vessel as Soyuz. I also wanted to say that this, one of the reports that we did, I participated in this work, and that NASA, that those are NASA experts that were looking at the all technologies of making the security operations. Representatives of Johnson Center, Barrett, for example, who is an astronaut now. At the time, he was a scientist and functionary who worked with astronauts in Houston. Here's the team that made our spaceship at the landing, and we said that this work can be done. In 1984, our company worked out the development perspective for Mir-2 orbital station, which could be used as for an international flight, and we thought of inclination to equator of 65 degrees. That was a serious change, but that work was not accepted as the main work. But by the 1993, the head of the Russian government, Chernomyrdin, and the U.S. Vice President Al Gore signed a joint statement on cooperation in space, which provided for the construction of the ISS and a series of long-term flights of American astronauts on the Mir complex before the future station. The decision was taken, and in November-December 1993, the scope of the Mir shuttle program was expanded and designated as Phase 1 of the International Space Station program. There first an historical memorandum and then agreement. You may see the text of the document. The goal of the Phase 1 program was to establish a foundation for future cooperation in space and reduce the risk related to the construction and operation of the future ISS. Phase 1 expanded the capabilities of the ISS by combining in-space operations with space technology demonstrations. Furthermore, Phase 1 provided early opportunities for expanded scientific research activities in orbit, which was done starting at Mir Station. On June 23, 1994, a contract made an agreement, a contract between Roscosmos and NASA for $400 million for supplies and services of the Mir Station, the ISS, and certain works in Phase 2. Phase 2, that's construction and exploitation of ISS. This contract provided the opportunity for NASA to purchase equipment and services, $100 million worth per year until 1997 to support the tasks of Phase 1 and commencement of the construction of ISS. That included conducting 9 dockings of space shuttle ships with the Mir Station, conducting scientific research by U.S. astronauts on board Mir Station, up to 21 months of total scientific research time, participation of 7 American astronauts in long-term flights to the Mir Station as members of the main expedition crew. 3 spacewalks were performed by astronauts on board the Mir Station. Delivery to the station of up to 3.5 tons of dry cargo and the same amount of water. Operation of 2.3 tons of NASA equipment on board the station. Development of the Russian side of the docking mechanisms APDS 2 and 3. This androgenous system certified for Apollo-Soyuz. They were needed for docking of space shuttle with the Mir station. Development by the Russian side of docking module for using space shuttle during docking with the Mir station. By the time atmosphere was the same as STS and Mir, until docking was possible, but it should be an androgenous system. Delivery of 343 kilograms of equipment by 3 cargo ships Progress M343 for medical and biological experiments on board the Mir station. That program, phase 1, beginning in 1994-95, shuttle Mir NASA, until the construction of ISS. That is a huge idea, very interesting conclusion we can make. And this is a serious fact that the 2 main global competing schools of space exploration, which had previously developed independently, having completed the first phase of their cooperation, have achieved the degree of interoperability needed for the creation, specifically, of this new type of orbital object of high power like ISS. And the flight of phase 1 Endeavour orbiter in 1998, STS-91, whose crew included executive director, my friend, executive director of Roscosmos, unfortunately, who left us already, Valery Rumin, was on that crew, the phase 1 joint program. I'm going a bit ahead, I will explain. He was on board and they made the final inspection, how the phase 1 was completed. By the 1st November 1993, Roscosmos and NASA signed the detailed work plan for the International Space Station. The main provisions and work under the detailed plan were enshrined in the protocol to the agreement of the implementation of the joint spaceflight program signed by Chernomyrdin and Al Gore in December of '93. The implementation of the construction plan began with the launch of a rocket with inclination to equator of 51.6 degrees, carrying Zarya module, the functional cargo module made by Boeing, made by Moscow plant, Khrushchev plant, that made earlier on Proton, and Boeing, which was registered as an American module integrated into the Russian segment of the ISS. An American module integrated into the Russian segment of ISS. And that shuttle that I'm showing that carried the docking module in order to dock it to Mir. to module Zarya. That was the basis for us to dock shuttles. To module Zarya. And that was, I'm showing, that was done on STS-88 Endeavour. You can see Unity that it brought, a module that would be a transitive module later on. And the American segment that was built later on, and had on both sides this unit, androgenous peripheric for docking mechanisms. Both module and mechanism were produced in Russia and then were sent to the US for tests. And then on STS-88, that's the module. And you can see that he has two docking units. The left part of the picture docked by arm, by the arm. Here in the phase 2 of ISS, we started construction as the first module was on orbit, came by shuttle the crew, where the commander was Robert Cabana, Sergei Krikalev from the Russian agency, and they were doing EVA, and they were making order in Zarya and Node 1 for future, for the shuttle coming to the right unit could bring additional cargoes and dock other units. And by doing this, construct the architecture of our joint station. And I want to say that it was like this, not long time for the US, but for Russia it was long. And I'll add a few words that realizing this project by 2011, NASA has already built its own American segment. Node 3 cupola, you know that unit, beautiful unit that allow the astronauts to see the width of space and Earth. And then there were beams, panels of solar batteries, 4B, 3A, and so on. Dragon started flying, and all those years of working, of constructing ISS, everybody worked with a lot of confidence and responsibility. And when some help was needed, when we lacked some possibilities for cargoes, NASA helped with shuttles who brought those cargoes. And I want to say that time has come when shuttles stopped flying and there were capsule ships like Dragon, like Soyuz, and modern times, you know better than me that our Soyuz and Dragon are making they carry astronauts and cosmonauts from other countries to Russian and American segments for preparation of those crews with with an opportunity to add the crew members. Now there are 7 people work there. At the first day we'll saw them. Besides, I wanted to say that NASA uses Orbital Space Corporation and their Japanese craft and Starliner is being tested for further work on the flight programs. And apart from that, all of them operate with certified APDS docking unit. This is an international standard. And in the future, they may dock with RMA2, our RMA2 model that it has. In 2021, 26th of July, a Proton K rocket launched the Nauka module. A long time it took, but we made it. It was docked with the ISS Zvezda module, vacated by the SO1 module, and Nauka module was substituted it. The node module with docking mechanism and berthing facilities was docked to the Nauka multifunctional module. And I was a little bit late to show you how Endeavour was docking. But Dragon, you know well, with the arm it is docked. This is Nauka module that was the latest that came to the Russian segment. And today you see the last architectural option of configuration of the station. My dear astronauts and cosmonauts, they do their mission, they're happy, and they will return soon, because all the cosmonauts, they're sad when they're on land, and because they want to work. I wish you all launches and landings, and that we have a beautiful life in our organization. Thank you very much for attention. Спасибо, Саша, спасибо большое.
If you saw in the title of the presentation, we did this because we work together and we need each other in space. We have maybe time for one question. Anybody? There's a wealth of information in this man, and you can speak with him at your leisure. Thank you very much, Sasha. All right, it's fine. Thank you.
Essa peça não está boa, so sorry.
Anymore. We adjourn. Our next speaker is Monsieur Randy Bresnik from the US Marine Corps, a test pilot who flew 3,500 hours in so many aircrafts. He's one of our most esteemed colleagues. He joined NASA in the class of 2004 and flew on STS-129 with Mike Foreman and Bobby Satcher, who are here in this room, I believe, and which also returned Nicole Stott, who will be our next speaker right after the break. I think also, Randy, your daughter was born while you were in space for 129, which makes you very unique for that. Randy also flew as ISS commander on Expedition 52 and 53 with Mark van der Hey, who's here also. But personally, even though Randy is very well known for his skill as a test pilot, I know him for his skills as a photographer, which happens to stem from a family legacy. So hopefully the next time you will talk to us about space photography. But today, Randy is here to give us an update on Artemis. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Good afternoon. Boa tarde to our Brazilian friends. Julie mentioned that my wife gave birth to our daughter while I was in space. I was goofing off, doing a spacewalk. She was doing the hard work. If you want to talk to her, she's right here in the middle. But it is a pleasure to join you this afternoon. Thank you to our hosts for having us. Like many of the Americans here, and perhaps from the most of the people in the center row, this is the first time we had the opportunity to be in Brazil. And so my wife Rebecca and I are very thankful for that. I will say I had an opportunity a few years ago to get very close to Brazil many, many times, about 400 kilometers away from Brazil. And I wanted to share with you one of my favorite pictures of the beauty of Brazil from space. And seeing the Amazon lit up by the sun was one of my favorite visions. So it's very nice today and this week for all of us to be able to see the beauty of Brazil and her people from Earth. Here to talk to you about an Artemis program and an update to it. For a lot of our folks in the center aisle, we've been talking about the Artemis program for years, so we'll give you an update on that. For our host country attendees, we'll go into a little bit of background. Might be a little repetitious for you guys, but we'll explain everything to them. In a nutshell, the Artemis program is taking humans forward to the moon, doing exploration there, establishing a long-term presence, and then using that as the impetus to be able to then prove out the capabilities to be able to go to Mars. What the Artemis program or Artemis campaign is not is the Artemis Accords. They are a separate entity. The Artemis Accords, as you can see, there's 59 flags up here, signatory countries that have signed the Accords. As you can see, the top row, our host country is also a signatory. And as of this past Tuesday, good news, there's now a 60th country that has signed the Artemis Accords. What the Artemis Accords are basically principles that allow us to go into space, all the countries agreeing to abide by these principles that allow us to have the peaceful uses of space and work together. So if you think about getting in an airliner and flying from Sao Paulo to, say, Korea, you fly over a lot of countries' airspace. You fly in with a lot of other airplanes flying around. And we here on Earth have figured out how to have everybody and all the countries on this planet agree to allow airline travel to work. Now we're taking principles that allow us to then go into outer space together and go explore the solar system beyond our little Earth, Moon corner of the solar system. Back to the Artemis campaign or the Artemis program. So it's not just one mission. Artemis is a collection of capabilities that allow us to execute exploration missions going Moon, Mars, and beyond. So we've got the systems where we're actually building the rockets, assembling the rockets, putting them together and launching the rockets. We also have to have the capability to talk to the crew and the vehicles and command them while we are out by the moon and beyond. We have to have the ability to transfer and take humans from Earth, move them to the lunar area and then take them from the lunar orbit down to the lunar surface. We also have the capability to, once they're on the surface, be able to go out and do a EVA or spacewalk or moonwalk, and that's what our suits are for. And then there's the transportation part, to be able to move them to be able to do science farther away than when they can just walk from their lunar lander. So the Artemis 1 mission launched 3 years ago this month. It was the first time the SLS rocket had ever flown, first time a human-rated Orion capsule had ever flown. First flight of the vehicle, and it had there's a point in space. We try to get to a certain location and speed. This rocket on its first flight had the accuracy of 99.974% accurate. So it was just amazing performance on the first flight of the rocket. It was a 26-day mission. 2.1 million miles was how far it flew. And it gave us the confidence in the vehicle, in the systems, in the operations, and working with mission control and our communication systems, so that then we could go ahead and proceed to Artemis 2, the first flight with humans on board. This was just, less than 2 weeks ago, where the Artemis capsule that will carry the humans to the moon left the processing facility, was lifted up in the vehicle assembly building, and set on top of the core stage rocket. The core stage rocket is over here, where we have the main core stage. On the sides are its 2 solid rocket boosters. And this assembly now completes the rocket with the service module from our ESA partners, the Orion capsule itself, and the big pointy part is the launch abort system. So if there's an issue with the vehicle during the launch or the first part of the launch, the rocket can pull the crew safely away from the rocket behind that's trying to chase it down. Then, January. We're less than 100 days from our first launch attempt on Artemis 2. So in January, that rocket, and you can see the big white solid rocket boosters on the side, will roll to the launch pad in preparation for the launch. And then, early February, the crew will head out to the launch pad for their launch. This is the crew. We have 3 American astronauts, all on the left, and they are all ASE members. We have Victor Glover, Christina Cook, Reed Wiseman, and as you heard from our proud Canadian partners, Jeremy Hansen on the far right. And so if you don't mind, we'll take a minute and kind of walk together what it might be like, and you can imagine with me what it would be like for them on their mission. They'll head out to the launch pad early February, get strapped into their Orion capsule. Then the hatch will close, and you can imagine what there's going on in their minds as the closeout crew closes the hatch, finishes up cleaning up the white room, and leaves the launch pad. And in that time, as the vehicle is fueled and they're listening to it creak and groan, they're sitting there thinking, we're going to do something nobody's done before. And there's nobody within 2 miles or about 4 kilometers of that launch pad except them and their rocket. And then just before midnight on the launch windows, we're going to light the 4 RS-25 engines on the back of the first stage and the 2 solid rocket motors on the side. And they'll be the first ones to feel what it's like to leave Earth on the world's most powerful rocket that was ever created and rated for humans to ride on. It has 8.8 million pounds of thrust that will help them defeat Earth's gravity and be on their way to the moon. It's a 10-day mission. They'll initially launch into an orbit, a high orbit here, that's about 24 hours. And because the moon's a long ways away, we want to go ahead and make sure that the vehicle's life controls, life support systems, and everything works on the vehicle before we actually head towards the moon. So we've got 24 hours to check it out. Think of it as you're going on a long drive, you drive around the block with your children to make sure you didn't forget something in the car before you head out on the road. And then after that first 24 hours, if the systems are all go, right about here, the next morning, we're going to hear a call. The world will hear a call over the radio that we haven't heard in 53 years. Orion, go for TLI. TLI stands for Trans-Lunar Injection Burn. With that burn complete, the Orion crew will head off to the moon for the remainder of the mission, and then as they get towards the moon's gravity will actually grab them and kind of slingshot them around and send them back to Earth. We don't even have to do a burn to send the vehicle back to Earth. We call that a free return trajectory. And imagine them looking at the moon getting bigger and bigger as the Earth gets smaller and smaller. You know, our whole lives, the moon's been a certain size, and that's it. And then they're going to be the point where it's not a sunset, it's an Earth set. And the Earth will go behind the moon, and they will not be seeing it as they go around the backside of the moon. And these 4 humans will have this view of the backside of the moon, something we haven't had in a very long time. And imagine them coming back to an ASE here and being able to talk to us next year about what that experience was like. This is a photo by Bill Anders from Apollo 8. May he rest in peace. A famous photo known as Earthrise. Imagine, if you will, a photo like this taken by one of the Artemis II crew. The Apollo generation, there are fewer and fewer of them with us. But the Artemis generation, which includes all of you, is growing. And so imagine a picture taken early next year from one of the astronauts of the Artemis generation that we can have as inspiration for us going forward beyond the moon. Then they have 4.5 days to come back to Earth. The Earth will start getting bigger again. The moon will get smaller. And then it'll come back to Earth's atmosphere at not Mach 25 like you see on the patches of the astronauts here, but Mach 32. And this is what it will look like to them out the window. This is video of Artemis 1, so it gives us a good indication as that heat shield ablates or takes slows the vehicle down from Mach 32 to a few hundred miles an hour and gets to the temperature of half the temperature of the sun's surface. We'll all breathe a sigh of relief when the parachutes come out and when they've landed just off the coast of San Diego, and we will welcome the crew back to Earth. That'll allow us to have the confidence to be able to proceed on to Artemis 3. Artemis 3 is a SpaceX Starship that will again land humans on the lunar surface. As you can see, the Starship's pretty big. You got the Statue of Liberty on the left there in New York Harbor. You got the shuttle, which many of our members here flew on. You've got in the center the Block 1, which is the vehicle that the Artemis 2 crew will ride on and the Artemis 3 crew will ride on. You got the Block 1B that for all the elements that Andy Mogensen talked about ESA providing and Hazza talked about UAE providing, they'll ride on the Block 1 vehicle. You have for size the Saturn V, which went to the moon and did the original 6 Apollo moon landings. And then you have Starship on the right. SpaceX calls the whole vehicle Starship, even though it has the 2 parts. The first stage, the booster, is what they call that particular part. That's 80 meters tall. And then you have the ship, they call it, which is also Starship, up on the top. That's another 50 meters. So it's about 130 meters tall. They have had 11 flights of that Starship so far. It's got 33 engines on the back, known as Raptors. Hugely powerful rocket. More powerful in terms of thrust than an SLS, but it's not human rated. And so that's where the distinction is between it and other vehicles. What's revolutionary about Starship is they are catching, not landing, but catching that first stage. That first stage is the most expensive part of the rocket. And instead of having landing legs that come out, they have the tower that has these things called chopsticks that stick out. The vehicle lands in them. The revolutionary part is this right here. That's the launch mount that the vehicle launches from. So they catch the vehicle in the chopsticks, just rotate the chopsticks, set it down on the launch pad. Then they're able to actually then catch, and they haven't done it yet, but they're about to do the testing on catching the Starship itself, which would be a tanker taking fuel to orbit, catching that, setting it on top of the booster, and refueling them both and launching them again. So actually, if you think about the Falcon 9 and the Dragon, there's been over 500 landings. And that certainly has been revolutionary because they're able to use those boosters and vehicles again. And that has driven down the cost to get things to space by a huge, huge amount. But they have landing legs, they land on a landing pad, or they land on a barge out in the water. And then they have to transport it back to the launch pad before they can send it off to space again. This is a huge efficiency in that. So once we go on our HLS, or Human Landing System NASA missions, the human lander, the NASA vehicle, will actually go up to space to get gas from the propellant starship that's in Earth orbit, and then it'll fly to the moon. Then for Artemis 3, it'll be the Orion crew launching from Earth to meet up with the starship, and the two of them will dock for the mission. Then 2 crew will get on the starship to go to the lunar surface for the first time. They'll go to low lunar orbit and then descend to the surface for the first lunar landing. They'll go down the elevator to the side and then step off on the lunar surface for the first time since December of 1972. I mean, imagine, this is very soon. I mean, this is all in our near-term lifetimes. Imagine where you'll be when that happens. Because if the Apollo landings were any guide, I think that all of us will know exactly, we'll remember for the rest of our lives exactly where we were and what we were doing when this happened. As you heard Koichi-san talk about on Tuesday, the Axiom company is building the spacesuit that allows us to do those lunar surface exploration missions. He gave us a description of the suit itself and some of the testing that he was able to do. Here's an example of what we're doing in the astronaut office, testing out these lunar exploration suits. On the left is running in one of these suits at about 5 kilometers per hour. On the right side just shows how the suits can be mobile in a 20-degree incline. And it was referenced, but what you see up top with these straps, that is the offloading system. We have 2 different types at the Johnson Space Center. And what it allows you to do is lift the suit and the person in it off to where you weigh what you would on the moon when you're doing the testing. So all told, the suit and the person in it are typically more than 150 kilograms. So this offloads and puts you at about 25 kilograms. You can imagine that's how the running is just a little flick of the toe to lift you up in a little arc, and you're able to actually be very efficient in moving quickly in the suit. If you remember on seeing Apollo videos, because they did not have the mobility in the lower suit, they kind of bunny hopped. And so this is a much better system. And the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, the world's largest swimming pool that Koichi-san went into with his training. As you can see, we've taken the end of the swimming pool and actually moved the ISS stanchions so we have a clear area to put sand, rocks, even lunar landers we've had in there to do testing, to evaluate ladders and things like that. And so for the past 2 weeks ago, we started the actual testing with the Axiom suit in the NBL. Then we're on, after Artemis 3 to Artemis 4, where we start building the Gateway. Gateway is our human presence in lunar orbit. It is a space station. You can see the international partners that are providing parts to that and modules to that International Space Station that you've already heard discussed during this week. At that space station, which will be in lunar orbit, the Orion vehicle, instead of docking directly to a starship or a lunar lander, the Orion vehicle will dock to the Gateway Space Station. Then on the earlier missions, 2 crew will then proceed into a lunar lander to go to a surface mission, while the other 2 crew members stay on the Gateway, outfit it, and then do deep space science on board. Eventually, all 4 crew will go down to the surface, while Orion and Gateway remain in lunar orbit. Then we're on to Artemis 5, where we're adding even more capability to the Artemis program. This is Blue Origin's New Glenn 1. They launched it for the first time in January this year. This is New Glenn 2. Just last week, it rolled out to the launch pad, and they are looking to launch that Sunday. That's their earliest opportunity. So you may have to choose if you're going to watch the Formula One in Sao Paulo, or you're going to watch the New Glenn 2 launch to space. Why is this important? New Glenn 2, that first stage, Blue Origin plans to land back at their landing site. They then plan to refurbish it, refuel it, and then next year, launch the Mark 1 lander to the lunar surface. So this is a smaller version, and this is not even a NASA contract. This is a company objective using a good test flight build-up approach to take a smaller lunar lander and test out the operations, the hardware, the technology, the systems before they actually proceed to their larger Mark II crewed lander. The Artemis 5 mission is the first mission that we expect to have the Blue Origin Mark II lander. And the thing to note is that both companies are going to have, both SpaceX and Blue Origin are going to have to land their landers uncrewed in a demonstration before we ever put crew on either vehicle. So those will be preceding the Artemis 3 mission and the Artemis 5 mission. We're also figuring out how to move our astronauts around the moon. And we have 3 companies that in the past year have been working to develop their concepts, along with the astronaut office, and are competing for a contract that gets awarded. We're targeting November 15th, so 9 days from now. I mean, things are happening. This is not just PowerPoint. For the past year, they've been doing iterative prototypes that we've been working with them on and literally driving to help them get to their best design to put in for the competition for the decision here coming up here in just a few days. Even going so far as to into full motion driving sims at one of our automotive providers here in the US, where they've got lunar lighting, lunar visuals, and they have programmed into their simulator the 16G characteristics. So like if you go over a bump, in a car and you kind of float out, you get that sensation here, 16G. So they're really sciencing the driving on the lunar surface. They even have the coefficient of friction of the regolith built into it, and you can skid and slide if you're on slopes. So it is really an amazing capability and sciencing the heck out of driving on the moon. And then we have the Japanese pressurized rover, where Japan is giving us the capability to go farther and farther away from our lunar lander to be able to look at different science sites. In the pressurized rover, crew will be in their shirt sleeves when they are driving, when they are working, when they're sleeping. They'll get into their spacesuits and then exit the rear of the vehicle to go do spacewalks or moonwalks, come back, get out of their suit, and then move to the next science site. And they can do this for up to 2 weeks on the lunar surface. So that'll give them a lot bigger capability than just the amount of time they have in their spacesuit, space packs, if they are doing an LTV. Already this summer, we've had astronauts, Japanese and NASA astronauts working together in Japan at the Toyota full motion simulator, driving theirs to see what their handling characteristics are for this vehicle, working on the design of where the seats are, what are the controls, what are the displays, where will we sleep. So these are all things that are happening right now. Japan is buying the metal to make this vehicle today. So this is happening. This is not just PowerPoint. And then we're going to have to be able to get these larger items to the moon, whether it's the pressurized rover or one of the habitats in the moon. We have to have a heavy lift capability. So this is all being developed right now. There's a competition going on. No one's been selected. So this is just an example of one company's idea of how they might do it. But we hope to have multiple companies that can deliver larger cargoes to the lunar surface as we build up this long-term sustained presence. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll go from a crew of 2 to the lunar surface to follow-on missions having all 4 crew there. That's because we'll have habitats. We'll have mobility from having rovers. We'll have surface power that allow crew to stay there and get through lunar nights. We'll also have the ability to use the resources of the moon in situ, or the water or the ice or anything else in the moon, to be able to actually build that sustainable presence. Because everything we do here, close to home, allows us to get here. These are the technologies, and it gives you an idea of how we map all the things we're doing on the moon to what we're going to do on Mars. And I'd like to leave you guys, kind of with a final thought. Nobody in the center of this room is going to be doing the Mars missions. It's going to be someone, your age, some of the younger people that are here. Not as many on the left side today, but you on the right. You guys will be the ones that are going to stand on the shoulders of these giants, take what we've done so far that you've heard about all day today, and put that into action when we finally get the opportunity to go to Mars. So imagine at an ASC Congress years in the future, when one of you or someone like you comes back and shares with us a picture of Earthrise, this time from the surface of Mars. Thank you. Obrigado.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you very much. Yes, there is time for questions.
All right. Вопрос есть?
Any questions? Yes, we have.
Randy, great talk. Right here. Just wondering about radiation protection. You're talking about 2 to 4 week stays on the lunar surface. I'd always heard that we'd be building habitats either in burying the habitats or in lava tubes, something like that.
That is all being considered right now. Interesting things we hear about is the microwave technologies, where we can kind of microwave bricks out of the lunar regolith. That looks to be pretty promising. There's actually a facility called the Swamp Works at KSC, Kennedy Space Center, that is actually doing 3D printing with lunar regolith simulant. And so that is another option. It certainly is a concern, and something we have not exactly figured out completely yet. I think Jessica Watkins, current astronaut, she's a geologist by trade. Her PhD was in lunar geology and lava tubes, so that is something that we're also looking at as well.
Randy, thanks.
Yes.
As you know, there's a little bit of an issue with the timing of the human lander. Is it an option that actually start flying, building the gateway before landing? So you swap and you start to do what's now Artemis 4 instead of Artemis 3. Short order. Is that a realistic option?
Right now, the development of the suit, the development of the lander are the two things we have to go to the lunar surface. So as going to space and building space stuff, everyone knows here is hard. And so as we actually figure out those things in development, and if they're going to keep pace with what we're ideally targeting, there is option to be flexible and change the mission content. It'll just depend on what elements are ready when. And so certainly while the NASA leadership is being is solidified going into the future, we'll be able to come back and update everyone, but right now there are no answers or no clear vision on embarking on any alternate mission profiles at this point. But it's certainly possible. Yes.
Long-term for more long-term permanent establishment, is there any consideration for genetic engineering or augmentation for resilience of human body in space?
I am not familiar with any discussion about that. If I was to phone a friend, I'd call Don Pettit, because I think he would probably be able to answer that question for us. If anyone else knows about it, please fly in Anusha after this. Just a minute.
Can I say in Portuguese? Or in English?
English
My
works
English
too.
is not too good, so I'm sorry.
Whatever works for you.
Many people ask why it took so long to return to the moon. Could we say Apollo was a sprint to visit while Artemis is a marathon to stay? And how much more technically complex is planning this standing presence compared to the short Apollo missions?
What a great question. You know, it's been 53 years since, you know, humans were on the lunar surface. And yes, it was a sprint, you know, and the American national will, and NASA, you know, were working as hard as they could through Mercury, Apollo, Gemini to go from a speech to inspire people to go to the moon in 1961 to a lunar landing in 1969. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. But it took a huge effort, a combined effort, and a lot of the government's money and the GDP of the nation. And then it was deemed, you know, that we weren't going to try and put people at risk to do that anymore, and we were going to transition. Well, things changed. We ended up getting the space shuttle. We ended up getting the International Space Station. But we've been dreaming about going to the moon again for a long time. Back in the 80s, back in the 90s, there were programs started, but we never finished. What's wonderful about the Artemis program is it's now, you know, getting so close to fruition. While the technology has changed and improved things, physics is still physics. You still have to get up to enough speed to leave Earth's gravity to get to the moon. Then you have to get into lunar orbit and brake and slow down. Then you have to be able to descend down with enough accuracy to land where you want to. Those are all things that modern technology helps. They're the same problems that Apollo, you know, had to surmount. The one benefit thing we have is Apollo, when they started, they didn't know it was possible. What's amazing is that we do. And we don't have to wonder what it's going to be like to touch down on the lunar surface. We don't have to wonder if we're going to sink into a bunch of lunar dust. And so we have the experience of Apollo to guide us as we go on these Artemis missions.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Obrigado.
Thank you, Randy. Well done. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to take a short break. If we make that break short, then we'll finish probably early. We have Nicole Stott, Christophe Fugelsang, and Gerhard Thiele as our last speakers. Please come back in 10 minutes. Thank you. sent me these just yesterday, his latest Aurora photos from ISS that he has processed. So we continue with Spaceship Earth. Again, thank you, Randy Bresnik, for showing us Earth at what it would look like from Mars. But now we're shifting gear a little bit. We're really going into a different way of looking at our planet. And our next speaker, but before I introduce our next speaker, I'd like to say to the US Marines right here, happy 250th birthday on Monday, November 10th. Wow, that's older than the notion. Bravo. Our next speaker is astronaut Nicole Stott. She's also an artist and the founder of Space for Art Foundation. She joined NASA in the astronaut class of 2000 and flew up to station on STS-128 with Christer Fuglesang that we will hear on this session, and then back down on Earth on STS-129 with the people I mentioned before, Mike Foreman, Randy Bresnik, Bobby Satcher. She also flew the last flight of Space Shuttle Discovery, STS-133, as her second space flight. She was 3 months on board the space station, but she's now very much recognized as a space artist and advocate whose work blends art, climate stewardship, and spacefaring perspective to advance from the Earth from Space message to the general public. Please welcome Nicole Stott.
Thank you very much. And I want first, on behalf of my husband and Chris and I, to say how happy we are to be here with all of you in Brazil for our very first ASE Congress. And you get this very cool pin for being your first time, so thank you for that. And I want to thank Julie and Marcos and the whole ASE team for including this Spaceship Earth session and for inviting me to share a little bit with you about something a little bit different, the story of Space for Art. I'm excited to do that. And I'm also excited because a lot of you in this room, whether you remember it or not, have been involved along the way with this project. And so it makes me very happy to bring it to you today. What I'd like us to do first, though, is just to consider the ways we put the human in human spaceflight, right? And not just by bringing our creativity, art, music to space, but the ways that creativity really helps with the technology that we're developing and also can help in the way we communicate our experience and carry that forward to the future. And I have been really excited over the years, to my pleasant surprise, to discover how many of you, how many of my colleagues have really latched onto this creative side of themselves too. And so I think that's really important. All right, let's go. And it worked. Okay, so I cannot do any presentation, I don't care what the topic is, without first starting with a little bit of ISS appreciation. And off the Earth, for the Earth. What a great mission statement for a place in space where everything that's being done there is ultimately all about improving life on Earth. I think that's just so cool. And whether the engineers intended it or not, I mean, this place is a masterpiece in space. It is stunning for so many reasons. I think about the ISS being, and a lot of us have talked about this week, I'm so grateful for that, being the best example for the power of partnership. I mean, we have peaceful and successful international cooperation, partnership, for over 25 years now on this mission in space, off the Earth, for the Earth. It is awesome. We should all be really super proud of that. And I think we should look towards the future in hopes that what we've done here together on this beautiful machine in space will carry forward into all of the other projects that we've talked about today. I also think there's this beautiful complexity, right, of the engineering and science, of the technology, certainly of those international partnerships. And it's amazing how we have brought this beautiful complexity, I guess, to life. I mean, this machine, best example, I think, of living off the grid that you can find right here in this picture. We have done this amazing work at building a machine in space that mimics as best we can what Earth does for us naturally, right? And so every morning when we wake up on the International Space Station, when we float out of our crew compartment, right? I hope some of you remember this, that one of the very first things we do is we check how much carbon dioxide's in our atmosphere. We check how much clean drinking water we have. We check on the integrity of that thin metal hull. And we absolutely check on the health and well-being of all of our crewmates. And we know we have to do that just to survive in that place. And I think that's pretty cool. It is absolutely, and this is the most important, it is like the best example for how we should be behaving like crewmates on our planetary spaceship as well. So, in all that complexity though, I think it's kind of neat to think about how compelling the simple things can be. You know, we fly in space, we're in that place with this extraordinary vantage point, we can take the time to reflect on it, and I think all of us are profoundly impacted by that experience, and we want to share it, and I think it's because it's like this reality check of who and where we all are in space together. And the things that like sum that up for me, they're really pretty simple. We all know them when we're in kindergarten, I think, are things like we live on a planet. We're all Earthlings. Only border that matters, that veil thin blue line of atmosphere that blankets and protects us all. And how important it is for us to accept our role as crewmates and not passengers on our planetary spaceship as well. All right, so let's celebrate. Let's see if this will work. A little bit of the ways, some of them, that we've brought our humanity to space with us. I mean, you saw Alexei Leonov there. We've been doing this since we first started flying humans in space. How many people knew Mike Collins was an astronaut as well? Al Worden wrote poetry to sum up his mission. There's Dan Bursch, basket weaver in space. There's our friend Richard, Barry Jackson Pollock, Don Pettit, Karen Nyberg quilted while she was in space, jam sessions going on all the time, musical instruments of all different forms. You gotta love your crewmate to have a bagpipe up there. We saw Cyan with her painting, Etienne with your amazing collection of art that you brought together to space. And we now have a really wonderful Alan Bean Astronaut Art Gallery in the astronaut crew quarters at Kennedy Space Center. So, well, one more. One of the absolute, personal highlights for me of flying in space was the opportunity to paint with watercolors. And I have to say, I would not have thought about doing this myself. I am so grateful to a person a lot of you probably know, Mary Jane Anderson, who was responsible for packing our stuff to go to space. And as astronauts, I think we're thinking about the checklist and wanting to make sure we've got all that we need so we don't screw up when we're there, and we're sharing it with our families, all that kind of thing. And Mary Jane very kindly reminded me, she's like, Nicole, you're going to be up there for months at a time. Bring something with you that you enjoy doing on Earth. So it was this watercolor kit. This has been a huge inspiration for me going forward. And I think that experience of that very human doing human spaceflight experience of painting in space, it has significantly inspired everything I've done going forward. It has beautifully, I think, impacted my post-NASA life and mission, where whether it's working with kids around the world to bring together their artwork in a big, meaningful way, or working on ocean conservation and reef restoration projects around the world, I really think that for me, that way of bringing my experience to life for other people has been through art. And I'm always so excited to hear how all of you have done that well. I think we feel compelled to share the experience in a meaningful way to ourselves. You know, how do we connect with as many people as possible? For me, that's been through art and these partnerships and purpose. But my main focus has really been with the Space for Art Foundation. I'm sporting the t-shirt today too. And instead of me standing up here and rambling even longer than I already have, I want to show you a short documentary film that was created about the foundation. I hope you enjoy it, and some of you will see yourselves in this, and please know how grateful we are for your support and participation. All right, we're ready for the long film. Yeah, I think as an astronaut, you try your best to, convince yourself that you know what you're going to feel, what you're going to see when you look out the windows of your spaceship back at Earth. And yet, even with the highest expectations, I don't think you really can prepare yourself. You get to space, and first of all, when you do float up to that window, it's like this disbelief that you're even there. I saw Earth. It was beautiful. It was glowing. It was all the colors that you know Earth to be. But everything about that view reminds you that everything is interconnected and that we need to remember that we live on a planet, that we're all Earthlings, that the only border that matters is that veil thin blue line of atmosphere that blankets and protects us all. And that absolutely our most important role as human beings is to behave like crewmates and not passengers on Spaceship Earth. My name's Nicole Stott. I'm a retired NASA astronaut, aquanaut, now author, and most importantly, mom, and the co-founder of an organization called the Space for Art Foundation. It's really nice now when we fly in space. Most of our missions now are to the International Space Station, where we know we're going to spend months at a time in that really special place. So most of us try in one way or another to bring something that we love to do here on Earth with us to space, because we know we're not just going to be working there, we're going to be living there too for an extended period of time. And so the thing I brought was a little watercolor kit. I enjoy painting here on Earth. I wanted to do art in space. I'm very thankful to my friend Mary Jane Anderson, and she's the one who reminded me of that. She's like, man, Nicole, you're there for months at a time. You're not just working. You might want to think about what you'll do in your free time. And so that was painting. So when I retired from NASA, knowing that I needed to find a way to uniquely even share the spaceflight experience with anyone that I could encounter, and communicating to them this oneness, this interconnectivity of everything that is happening with us here on the planet, art just seemed like the way to do that. But then some friends of mine, one in particular, Gordon Andrews at the Johnson Space Center, works with the International Space Station Communications Program. He invited me over one day to introduce me to a gentleman named Ian Sion. Ian had always done these projects with the kids where each child would create their own individual piece of art, and then Ian would put it together into some really large scale, what he called community art project. And that was everything from a 20-foot long dragon. Every scale on the dragon was a kid's piece of art, to ginormous murals on the sides of the hospital, or wrapping buses with the kids' art.
A woman came up to me and said, hey, I saw the dragon that you did at MD Anderson. And I said, oh, that's great. And what do you do? And she told me that she worked at NASA. And I said, oh, that's great. I always wanted to do a collaboration with NASA, just blurted it out.
We started working with the kids first at MD Anderson. That has grown to working with kids on our latest Suit Beyond, where we have artwork from at least one child in every country on the planet.
Take those astronauts to their children's hospitals and sit them with the kids. What does this intersection mean?
Working on these projects, we decided we needed to form an organization, and we called that the Space for Art Foundation. We believe that our mission is to unite a planetary community of children through the awe and wonder of space exploration and the healing power of art. And we feel like we feel very fortunate to be part of these projects. We're in this really cool place here today called ILC Dover, which is the spacesuit company, has been making our real spacesuits since we had those first steps on the moon. And they have been with us every step of the way, just volunteering to quilt together these kids' artwork into these incredible art spacesuits.
I got a phone call one day from one of the NASA managers on the spacesuit side, and he said, "Dave, we got this request. It just sort of sounds crazy, but this artist guy wants to talk about spacesuits and arts and the intersection of that." And got on the phone with Ian and was still a little confused on what are we doing here, but he was able to explain what he did for a business in arts in medicine, and something I didn't really even understand existed at the time. So we talked through it, and as soon as he told me it was for pediatric cancer kids, so what do you think, Dave? Absolutely.
My name is Gary Chilson. I work for ILC Dover. I've been with ILC Dover for 27 years. And I was introduced to the spacesuit by Nicole and Ian and Dave. So what I do is they will send me patterns. Kids get all together, they paint these beautiful artwork pieces, and they come in different sizes, pieces and that, and I'll take patterns, cut them out, and sew them together to make a spacesuit. I think the kids get, for the most part, a great kick because it's a spacesuit. And who doesn't like a spacesuit?
Because of this one kind of like fork in all of our roads where we met, we've had the chance to do a bunch of different spacesuits and send some of them up. We made Hope. We worked on that one with exclusively patients who are in treatment at MD Anderson.
And we've been very fortunate to have a couple of those suits fly to and from the International Space Station.
At some point in this process, it was like, well, we might be able to get a flight suit up. Like, let's see. So here's the website, go order a flight suit. And I did. I would take it room to room. This one was like, I do an outline on the suit. I kind of drew a pattern in Sharpie, and I told the kids, like, you can either stick in the pattern or not. I just want something there so people aren't intimidated. Kate Rubens came to the hospital and worked with us. Kate was a cancer biologist. And then we were able to get that suit up, and we were able to fly it up on SpaceX. I think it was SpaceX 9, Falcon 9. We flew it up on, and that was also just incredible. That they were like, yeah, we'll do it.
As you guys were painting, you were thinking about space and you were thinking about orbiting the planet. And I can tell you that your spacesuit has found a wonderful home up here on the International Space Station.
The next one was Unity, and this was again a pivotal moment for Gordo. At one point, we're sitting in the SUV, and he goes, "You guys got to make one with all the partnering space agencies. You got to make one with all around the world. You got to just do it."
I'm going to meet Ian in Dulles Airport. As I'm walking, I'm looking at this gorgeous compilation of kids' artwork, little windows of art that just was so reminiscent to me of the art spacesuits we'd already done. And I trip off this thing and I'm like, oh my gosh, who did this? Where's this from? I'm taking pictures of it. There was no name on it other than it was Project Postcard. And with the wonders of social media, you can track people down these days.
After a couple of years, I guess the second year of the installation being there, I get all of a sudden an Instagram message. Somebody tagged me in my Instagram. I look at this tag and it said Astro Nicole, and then I see an astronaut, and I'm thinking, an astronaut likes my artwork. No, she sends me a picture of this astronaut in the screen of the ISS, this TV looking at space, and she said underneath the picture she put postcards to space, and then that was the beginning of our postcards to space project. I had my schools that I had the kids doing the artwork, and she had her hospitals, and we joined forces. It started rolling.
It's just so cool to me to think about not just the kids' art in space, but these partnerships that we've developed along the way with people all over the world who have this same kind of motivation for you know, inspiring these kids in some way, for allowing them to understand that they're not alone in what they're going through, to see kids all over the world, you know, sadly in some ways are dealing with these same kinds of things, and that they can come together as part of something bigger than just their little individual piece of art, which is beautiful on its own. But oh my gosh, when you see it all come together, it's just even more beautiful.
The feeling the kids got the moment they received this little piece of paper, you know, with a little astronaut that they had to do a drawing for us. That was like a ticket to space for them. We're going to space. And to me, they would scream, we're going to space, we're going to space.
So each of these suits that we've created has a name. The first one was Hope, the second one was Courage, Unity, Victory, Dreamer, Exploration, and our latest suit is called Beyond. Beyond is the ambassador for Spaceship Earth, and we want every kid that's worked on this spacesuit to know that one of their most important roles is as crewmates here on Spaceship Earth, and for them to understand the simple lessons that we learn when we go to space, like, oh my gosh, we live on a planet. We're all Earthlings. The only border that matters is our thin blue line of atmosphere. And we're hopeful that these lessons become a reality for them very early in their lives, and that they would hopefully carry them forward in their lives as crewmates. We're going to be healthier if our planet is healthier, and kids really get that.
It's something beautiful that everybody should experience, you know, that little sense of that spark of knowledge that they gain in that second. And that's a moment when they are transformed.
And Ian had told me, he's like, these kids who are going through what you hope is the worst thing they will ever have to deal with in their entire lives, pediatric cancer, in a refugee center somewhere, orphanages, places that, you know, you really don't want any child to ever have to be, they will come at you sometimes with the most beyond their years wisdom.
There were families whose kids didn't survive, who had their work go up, and they were able to come to Mission Control and sit in Mission Control and see the astronauts wearing their kids' artwork and see that coming back to the world is a kind of spiritual version of space.
Having gathered your strength, a will to win, and all your courage, you, our young artists and dreamers, took up paint and brushes in order to put your innermost dreams about life and happiness on a spacesuit.
I'm painting with this little girl, you know, she's going through cancer treatment. It was amazing to me to watch how when she came into the room, she was really pretty tired. And then we start painting together and talking about space, and she's sitting up straighter. And she just out of nowhere says to me, what you do as an astronaut in space, that must be a lot like what I'm going through here in the hospital. And so I'm just like, oh, well, what do you mean? And she just kept talking and painting. And she's like, yeah, you know, when you're in space, you can't see your family and friends the same way. You can't just go outside anytime you want. I think they're doing all kinds of tests on you. And she's like, and I think you have radiation. You know, you've got this radiation thing that, and I'm like, holy moly. So perfect. I mean, and talk about beyond your years wisdom. I was just like, you are exactly right.
Our spirits are connected to this universe, and that there's something that I felt like was outside of the norm of the space program that gave this something, a different meaning. And I think a lot of the people who touched it from the space program felt that way.
I knew that this work with these kids, making art spacesuits, making art videos with what they do, and working with them in these settings, I discovered my next mission in life. I knew I had gone to space and done the things that I did there so that I could come and be in that place and doing this work.
See the kids' reaction of the finished product. And then you think it's all worthwhile. That has been my experience throughout this process, working with the Space for Art Foundation.
This is all worth it. There is nothing we can do to even come close to the trials that these people are going through. And if this helps them, if this helps the kids, and it clearly does, right, then there's nothing we shouldn't be doing.
I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope some of you in the room saw yourselves in the video. We are hugely grateful for that support, and we welcome anybody else that wants to get involved. Please let me know. I now have all of your email addresses, so I will likely reach out at some point when we're doing another project to see if you have, kids at a hospital or a school or other organization that you think might want to participate. So thank you in advance for that as well. I just show you this last screen because one of the things we try to do with the artwork that the kids create is to share it. And we've been able to do that in some pretty cool ways through some exhibits that started out at Space Center Houston and that have gone to different places. These are two of the art spacesuits. We've got a very cool exhibit going on down in Miami that'll be running through the first week of December, which is Art Week down there. And in addition to the art spacesuits, we have some amazing artwork. This in the top right, that's a beautiful piece by Karen Nyberg, astronaut Karen Nyberg. Absolutely one of the most talented artists I have ever met in my life. She loves doing textile art, just as she did with the quilting on the space station. These are a couple images of Don's that he shared with us. They're in very large format down there on one of the walls. We are very grateful that Cyan has contributed a few of her pieces that we'll be adding to the collection. And so if you're in Miami, please stop by and say hi and check out the Ocean Planet exhibit. Thanks, you guys.
Nicole, this is an extraordinary project, and it shows that we can use the aura of space and to bring it to the people right here on Earth. And we need to do more of that. Thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. Wonderful. So we saw what art and how much it can touch people. But one of the things we all share as human beings is our love for some kind of music. Last year in the Netherlands, we were treated to an absolutely beautiful video that was made with André Kuipers and his colleagues, where we had the views of Earth played on special music. Well, our next presentation is called Earth Music Theater. It is an initiative of Dan Barstow, and he sent us a little video that we will play in a minute. Dan actually volunteers his time for ASE. He's the director of Earth Music Theater, and he was before that the senior education manager for the ISS US National Lab. So Dan is not with us, but we have Gerhard Thiele was with Dan just a couple of days ago, who will come and take the questions about this. But to my fellow the flyers, remember that first time you got to a window and you had earphones and your favorite music? Not when you were exercising, but really when you were looking at the Earth pass by. It's an extraordinary feeling, and we do share that. So without further ado, here's the video on Earth Music Theater, and you'll see what it can do for you.
And welcome to today's session on Earth Music Theater. I'm Dan Barstow. I'm director of Earth Music Theater and on the volunteer staff for the Association of Space Explorers. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. A year ago, we spoke in the Netherlands about our new program with musicians and your stellar photography as a new website to share with the world your glorious views of Earth and the joy of music. Today, I will give you a progress report. We committed to make 52 movies over the course of the year, and we did that. Spectacular movies that I hope you've enjoyed seeing. But I also want to tell you about the tools that we've created to use these photos and movies, and how we will make these tools available to you as ASE members. Of course, we designed our mission patch for earthmusictheater.org, a project of the Association of Space Explorers. But more importantly, we established a type of creative art form that many people around the world have enjoyed. We've worked out agreements with some 42 musicians. We created all of these movies. They combine the best of your photography with some truly world-class award-winning musicians. They've all donated their music for our use in this program, and we appreciate the photography that you've done. To do this, we had to invent some new tools, more powerful ways to access, search, and explore your photography, and also to create the movies that you do when you fix mount the camera into the window. Sure, Earth gets the credit, but there's so much that you do behind the scenes to make these photographs work. Many of you are also musicians. Here's Katie Coleman. In fact, we just performed with her in a Earth Music Theater live production in Massachusetts. She played the flute as we showed these beautiful movies. So now let's dive in. I'd like to show you a few samples. You won't see the full movies, you won't hear the full music, but you'll at least be able to hear something of what we've done. Astronauts of ISS 43 made this really spectacular film of the aurora over Scandinavia. Musician Steve Thomas and his jazz band love to improv. We've done over a dozen movies with him, and in this one he was just warming up. Let's do another one based on some movies from ISS 52 of the sunset. A glorious zoom in. Next, I want to credit a band called Stardust Symphony. They have a flute, a vibraphone, and a harpsichord. We performed as part of our Earth Music Theater Live series at a big event in Leipzig for what they call the Klimakonzert, calling attention to issues of climate change and planetary stewardship. Here is an aria for Earth as we fly over Patagonia. I want to give a special thank you to Gerhard Thiele, who joined us in that presentation. You can see him here in this photograph. Yeah, that's him, dwarfed by the huge screen. I understand that Gerhard is with you in person there in Sao Paulo, so he can answer questions and discuss his role in person. Thank you, Gerhard. Astronaut Sultan Al-Nayati did a really wonderful movie as we come in over the coast of Africa, Sahara, and the Mediterranean. We combined this with music from Viktor Romanov, a very creative thematic musician. Next, an example from Butch, who, well, they said he was stranded in space, but he certainly enjoyed spending a lot of time doing some absolutely fabulous Earth photography. Here is Earth Harmony Sonata with organist Brian Hoffman. We released that movie called Earth Harmony Sonata on Earth Day. Of course, humans aren't the only ones who make music. With some photography by astronauts of ISS 67, we used whale recordings made by Paul Knapp Jr. Then we expanded out a bit and offered up the opportunity to young musicians. Here is Emily Amos of the American Guild of Organists playing a Bach Trio Sonata as she looks out at the night of eastern U.S. Now on to a bit more lively music with Heart and Soul of Dwayne Haggins and some aurora photography by the crew of ISS 65. I have to say that Matthew Dominic did some absolutely wonderful photography. Here, a Japanese musician, Hiroshi Ebina, was quite inspired by his views looking out at the dragon and the aurora. And of course, we have to give full honor and respect to Don Pettit, who is unequivocally the master of this Earth photography. He would carefully wrap himself around with this cloth to keep light from reflecting, and do some really creative music. Here we have an organist from Chile playing some evocative ethereal music. So that's Earth Music Theater. I think you can see it's quite a production from the Association of Space Explorers. All of these are available for free in full K superb sound on earthmusictheater.org. Please watch, enjoy, and spread the good word. But now, in this second part of the program, I'd like to talk to you about the tools that we had to create that may be able to help you as astronauts explore your own photographs and movies of Earth. So here's my desk. This is where I do much of the work on reviewing the images, ingesting them, exploring them, combining them, taking advantage of a lot of powerful tools. But it's always been frustrating, the amount of work involved in doing this. There must be a simpler way. We began by using Gateway to Astronaut Photography. You're all, I'm sure, familiar with it. I'll give a lot of credit to the Crew Earth Observation Program. They do an absolutely spectacular job managing the Earth photographs, supporting you on orbit, giving you science targets, and so on. But in reality, the website, while it's reliable, is not a rich and powerful creative exploration environment. So I started using tools like Lightroom, used by many photographers. It has a lot of power and has really helped us in many ways, but is still a bit cumbersome for the complexity of the work we want to do. I also use DaVinci Resolve, a commercial movie making system that enables us to take the still photograph sequences you take and make them into animated movies. But you know, I long dreamed for many years of a system that was optimized for these Earth photographs. We tried working with a number of different programmers. We even worked with the Supercomputer Center in San Diego. But it just was a difficult task to grasp and make this customized just for our need. So about 6 months ago, as we were exploring possibilities, the power of artificial intelligence became clear. These systems, Claude, Gemini, and others, are incredibly capable programmers, especially if working under the guidance that we provide in what kind of a system we want. We created tools to import the photos, to automatically ingest the data, to create the maps, to identify who the astronaut was who photographed them, and so on and so forth. We also created some powerful searching tools, all of this in Python code that operates now on my computer and ultimately will work over the web. One interesting insight I found is that when you photograph, you have kind of these study sessions, I call them, where you go to the cupola for 5 minutes, half an hour, or more, and you explore Greece, for example, as you approach and recede from it. You zoom in, you compose things, you try to show some sky or not. You are artistic and expressive in these kind of work sessions. So now this system automatically groups things by your work sessions. It helps us navigate our way through. and even automatically create the movies. This is what we call the magic movie machine. We do this in 3 phases. The first phase is now done, this internal system. The second phase is what we're providing to you. We will adapt this system over the next several months, working with several astronauts, to use this over the web for you to explore your own photographs of those of your expedition or other things that might interest you. And hopefully pick your favorites that you think inspire musicians. We'll build this into the Earth Music Theater. Ultimately, we're transforming Earth Music Theater into a much more powerful system for creativity by both
So if you understood, you can download those examples that we've seen already directly from the website, and you can use them in your presentation, but soon you will be able to use your own photographs or pieces of film and then put your own music to it in an efficient manner, and to perhaps give us a real live exercise of this. I'd like to ask my fellow sardine Gerhard Thiele, who flew on STS-99, took a lot of good pictures of Earth, so he knows what he's talking about, to maybe answer some question and give us a few words.
Well, thanks, Julie. The main point, as you rightfully said, is these movies are available for you to download, and what Dan pointed out in the second half is we are working on tools to make the search for the pictures that you have taken easier and more available to all of you. So I personally think it is extremely powerful. I see that Dan is here. Dan, thanks for joining us. And if there are any questions, then I will forward them first to you, because you may be more prone to answer those. But if there are any questions from the audience, please shoot.
The question.
Yeah, wonderful here.
This is wonderful. I'm wondering, is there a copyright issue? Why can't we put this on YouTube so that everyone in the world can enjoy it?
Dan.
Yes, there's no copyright problem to this. ASE works out an agreement with the who donate and give authorization to use their recordings, and we let them post the movie, and you can see the movie as well, so there are no copyright issues. We have signed agreements with all the musicians, and the music, ASE owns the copyright, but we let anybody use it.
So we can create a ASE Earth Music channel on YouTube and post them all there?
Yes, yes, we can.
Julie.
Any other questions for Gerhard or Dan? Good. Dan, thank you so much for putting this video together.
Thank you. And if I can just say, if there are any astronauts who are especially interested in helping in the next phase, we'd love to work with you, and you can contact Andy Turnage to work out details.
Okay, you'll have volunteers for sure. So this is the last session of technical sessions of this Congress, but the good news is that if you are willing, we can start our General Assembly early and then finish early tonight, so we can have a nice supper together. So after this session is over, can you please remain the flyers here? We'd like to take a photo. I think, Marcos, you'd wanted one. Yes, but I have one more presentation. Are our fellow Chinese in the room? Yes, they are, some of them. They're outside? Okay. We will figure this out after this next presentation. But please, could you please stay? And then let's get going with our program if you're in agreement, and then we'll finish early, right? All right. So last but not least, another fellow sardine is presenting to you a moon house project. That's engineer and particle physicist Christer Fuglesang from Sweden. He was selected by ESA in 1992 and then was a backup for Thomas Reiter for the Euromir 95 mission. He then joined the class of 96 at NASA. He's a veteran of 2 spaceflight, STS-116 with Bill Offerline and Mark Polanski, and of STS-128 with Nicole Stott. I think she's flown with everybody, Nicole. That's great. And I heard Christer present this talk at IAC in Sydney just a few weeks ago. I was mesmerized, so I immediately volunteered him to present it to you. So here you go, Christer.
Well, thank you, fellow Sardine. You know, I just get the feeling, first of all, I'm very proud to kind of be the last speaker of this fabulous conference and everything, but I know how many of you astronauts have heard when you go up, you've been speaking and then someone comes after you and they say, oh yeah, now I'm going to talk after an astronaut. Well, I'm going to talk after 20-some astronauts, and I'm going to talk about art after some real artists. But when Julie asked me to give this talk from there, I was very happy. So I'm happy to do this. It is really work with others. Mikael Genberg, who is the artist, Victor Pettersson, who is actually a student of mine, and he did his master thesis project on the technical things here. And Emin Winterhav, who is the technical lead to implement everything. So this moon house thing is a kind of idea which was came up by this artist Mikael Genberg, who's a very creative and entrepreneurial artist. It's not always they have these artists have these both kind of things. So in 1999, he got this idea. Well, let's put a red house on the moon, a typical Swedish house. All over Sweden, you will see these kind of small red houses with white corners. There are thousands and thousands of them everywhere. And I want to actually use his own words on his kind of thinking about it. The moon house carries a poetic undertone. It reminds us of our roots and our home on Earth, while symbolizing our dreams and ambitions to explore and expand beyond our known boundaries. A red house gazing back at the pale blue dots, as Sagan called our beautiful planet. So he presented this idea in 1999, and it created quite some interest, actually. And studies were done. The Swedish, should rather also say that Mikael Genberg, the artist, he had already used this kind of concept of the Swedish red little house in various places. So I put them in trees, on the water, under the water, and even on the big building, signature building in Stockholm, an arena called the Globe, 83 meters diameter. So when he then actually came up with this idea and he presented it, as I said, it did create a lot of interest. And the Swedish Space Corporation did a little feasibility study. it turned out that it would cost a lot, many zeros. So it was clear that it was not really realistic at the time. But the idea and the dream lived on, and I was on a very early stage, actually kind of brought in a bit like as an ambassador for it. And when I did my second space flight, the STS-128 in 2009, I brought with me a little model which had been engineered to be kind of foldable. I brought it in my crew notebook. I wasn't sure that the bosses would agree to it, so I decided not to ask anybody. And at the time after I'd done this movie, I gave it to the Moon House people, and they said, well, please be very careful how you use it. I wasn't afraid to be grounded, because I'd already been told my ESA bosses long time earlier that I wouldn't fly again anyhow, but I didn't want to get into trouble, so to say. But okay, 16 years later now, I dare to show it. So, yeah, here you can see the engineering skills of some Swedish artists there. You have to see when it unfolds also. Or it's rather how you kind of stand.
Finns det någon smart konstruktör som har tänkt till här lite? Så bara genom att trycka lite så här.
There it is.
Så får vi ett fyrkantigt hus.
An interesting thing is that the size here is kind of really pretty much the size which eventually went to the moon. This was 2009, that flight, and it was still very expensive to go to the moon. But in the 2020s, there started to be commercial flights even, landers to the moon. And it became a possibility, without many zeros on the price tag, to get to the moon with an artist item. And iSpace had a hard landing in 2023, but when they started to plan for the second flight, there became a discussion there and connection, and it became a possibility, it became a deal to bring the moon house with iSpace with not quite a small price. And actually a private limited company was created, the Moon Housing Corporation, with friends and other interested people in the stupid. And I'm actually one of the investors myself. Well, even artists' work may need a lot of technology behind it. So in this case, here you can see the house. It was 3D printed in aluminum. The house itself, 55 grams only, but with a mounting device, which you can see to the right there, it added up to 80.7 grams. But there was other technological challenges. For example, the paint. As far as we know, no one has used before red and green paint in space. So that was developed to make sure it was UV resistant and could take the vacuum, etc. And here you can see to the left actually both the flight model and the spare flight model, and to the right how it is together with the rover Tenacious, who flew with the lander Resilience to the moon then. Well, as you all know, it's difficult to make a good landing on the moon. Although there wasn't a big altitude we had to do, about 8 centimeters only, we still wanted to make sure that the landing we made, these last 8 centimeters, would be a good landing without tripping over. And therefore we did a lot of tests. So at our own laboratory, was just focused on the release mechanism there and did a lot of videos to see what happened. And it turned out it actually got some rotations when it released, both in yaw and pitch. We did tests at the Luna facility, was mentioned by Andre Mogensen yesterday, at the ASE in Cologne, on ground interactions. And we also made drop tests in a vacuum chamber to see how it difference between the atmosphere, and on the moon you don't have the atmosphere. And we noticed some differences, actually. We also, of course, the kind of main goal was to get the house to the lunar surface. But the ultimate aim was to get a really nice picture of the little red moon house on the moon, and ideally with the Earth in the background. So this was one of the major works our master student did, Victor Pettersson. And he started by looking at, let's see, I'll get the light, yeah. The location in sky by the Earth in blue here and the sun in red. Over the time, the operation would be on the moon. So this is about 2 weeks, then about 1 lunar day. And we would land, I don't know exactly when, but somewhere here in the morning, so to say. Unfortunately, we figured out that the sun, Earth would always be above the sun, and also in azimuth, they would be too close to each other, so it would not be possible to actually get the ideal picture you want to have. One had to do some photoshopping in the end for that. By the way, we were landing at 60 degrees north, so it was fairly far north on the moon. Actually, it's a typical area in Sweden, 60 degrees on Earth. So we had to give up that idea. And then he did, Victor, a lot of simulations. So these are not real photos, these are actually simulated rendered photos. On what's the distance you would be with the rover. The rover would drop the house, then would back off and take some photos. And how close should you be? There was no focus on the camera, which is on the front of the rover. And it was pretty wide-angle camera, so you had to be quite close. So here is a photo as it would be from 1 meter's distance, and here's half a meter. Another problem is that you get the shade here of the rover, and how do you kind of want the illumination on this one? And we figured out, yeah, you need to be close to get a good photo, half a meter only. So we did a test at Luna, which is the common facility between ESA and DLR in Cologne at the ASE. And we are very grateful, thanks them for the help. And what you could do there is a really great facility if you want to simulate something on the moon with a regolith, kind of how it looks like, and the illumination. There's a sun illuminator there. And so we dropped in various places. How much inclination could you have? What would happen if it's too soft in the surface? And how could you back off and get a big picture of it? So some lessons learned from this was that, as I said, it was a yaw rotation when released, and that didn't go away when you went into vacuum, but the pitch motion actually vanished, and that was probably because of some non-symmetry on the house due to the release mechanism and the air resistance when it will fall. The compactness of the regolith was a factor for a safe landing, not trip over. And it's not easy to actually get a good picture. Well, the moon house was launched with the lander resilience on the rover Tenacious on the 15th of January this year on the Falcon 9. It took a very long and fuel, very little propellant road, so to say, to the moon, 1.1 kilometers. Went into lunar orbit at the end of May, And then on the 5th of June, the landing operations started. Unfortunately, at altitude of about 190 meters something, the signals were lost. And afterwards figured out that it was probably some failure with the laser range finder. So it just crashed down, and the likely landing speed was something like 50 to 72 kilometers per hour. Maybe a little bit too much to have a soft landing. And, but interesting is that a few days after the hard landing, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter took a photo and could be compared with an earlier photo. And certainly there's something there. And the moon house is there. The moon house is on the moon. We don't really know the shape. But I am sure that one day, when we start to fly to the moon regularly and we walk around there, somebody, they will go to this space and they will look for it and they will find the moon house. Who knows? Maybe it fell off and rolled and it's actually standing there exactly like that. Someday we'll find out. Thank you. Any question? Many more technical details I can give you, but not everything. I think everyone is waiting for the meeting. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Christer. What a treat. What a treat. And I really look forward. I hope it happens in my lifetime that someone goes and gets a picture of the moon house. Okay, well, we did make up time, ladies and gentlemen. The first thing is that we will adjourn the technical session at this point. I'd like, again, the flyers to stay and the companions. We will take a photo with our Chinese colleagues who are in the room. I see them. So as soon as we finish, then maybe gather at the front here. And then maybe very, very short, right after that, we'll start with our General Assembly. So that we can finish early. But again, thank you very much. Let me know if you liked that different aspect of Spaceship Earth. And if that's the case, then maybe we can do this again. Thank you very much for your attention.
Presenters here, so just for
yes. Yeah. Can I have the presenters, please, for a last photo, please? Right in the middle. Well done. Well done, well done. Well done. I'm not going. You just go in the middle, and then we'll take...